My name is Norval Ignatius Brown, yes, Ignatius, and I am the senior pastor here at Christ United Methodist Church, and I want to welcome you to Christ United Methodist Church for this very, very important debate forum. And I want you to know something about the church. The church is like orange juice. Yes, it is. Did you know that? Orange juice, isn't just for breakfast anymore. And the church isn't just for spiritual formation anymore. The church is here to be a resource for the community, as a place for meeting, as a place for disseminating information, as a place for learning more about what goes on in our community and how we could have an effect on what goes on in our community. And I hope and I pray that that is why you are here this afternoon, because the community is important to you, and with these elections coming up, that an informed voter is an important voter. We want to have an opportunity for you to be informed, and so we're glad to have this venue as a place to meet for this kind of information. And so we're also glad to be working with the League of Women Voters and inviting candidates in to share with you their platforms so that you can make decisions as to how to vote in November. And so with those words, I say welcome, and I'm going to turn this microphone over to Elaine Adler from the League of Women Voters, who is going to be sharing with us the rest of the evening. Here.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Welcome to the candidate debates. It's sponsored by the Leagues of Women Voters of Deerfield area, Lake Forest, Lake Bluff, and Highland Park, Highwood, of which I am a member. We want to thank Dr. Brown for allowing us to come to this really nice venue to have this. You probably know, but we like to reiterate it, that the League of Women Voters is a grassroots organization, nonpartisan. We do not support individual candidates, and we don't oppose them. What we do is we study issues, and we bring that issue to our membership. And if our membership says, yes, we agree with this, then we take a position on the issues. The other thing I'd like you to know is that when you join our league, and we hope you do if you're not a member, you're joining a local league, a national league, and a state league. So you get information from all three different kinds of leagues, and you might like to know that men have been members of the league since the 70s. Last week, we had a huge debate. There were over 250 people who came to Deerfield High School, and this week is our second week, so we want to thank, in a row, we want to thank all the volunteers who put this all together. We are asking you not to take video or photography if you're going to use it for campaign purposes. Otherwise, we know that the news is here, and that's a totally different story. I want to introduce our moderator, and just before I do, you'll see membership tables out there. There are brochures for you, and one of them is the new Illinois Voters, which will give you a lot of information about. You can have your ballot there and give you a lot of information about the upcoming elections. Before I introduce our moderator, Judy Hoffman, we want you to know that our moderators are league people. They come from leagues that are not part of this candidate debate. And Judy is a longtime moderator who's been a part of the Evanston League. She served as a moderator for over a decade, and maybe you recognize her because she works at the Deerfield Public Library as outreach coordinator. Judy.
Thank you. Great to see this turnout today. First thing, most important piece of business, make sure your phones are silenced. I heard already a few dings. Feel free to go to airplane mode, whatever works. Questions are now being accepted for the first three races that we're going to have today, the clerk, the treasurer, and the sheriff. If you'd like to submit a question, raise your hand, and they'll bring around a card and a pencil for you. And then when you're done, raise your hand again, and they will pick up your card from you. Please note, as we're doing the 3 races side by side, please note on your card which race at the top that this question is for. Then we'll have a small break after the 3. We'll have about 5-minute break, be switching over to get ready for the county board positions, and at that point, we'll start collecting questions for the county board positions. And just a brief, if the county board candidates are here, as soon as we finish the sheriff forum, please come to the front to meet with me. It's very important that your questions must address issues and not individuals. Questions directed to a single candidate will not be presented. Members of the league will review the questions for redundancy and sort through them to allow the widest variety of issues to be brought today for these rather short forums. Timekeepers and time cards will give candidates notice of their running time on each of the statements and the questions. If the candidate is still speaking when the stop comes up, let them finish their sentence, and often is the case, I need to stop the candidate. Don't be put off by that. The forum will begin with opening statements of up to 1.5 minutes. Candidates will have up to 1.5 minutes to answer the questions, and again for their closing statements, up to 1.5 minutes. I'll be happy to repeat any questions for the candidates. That is common. Today's forum, just so you know, is a little bit different if you haven't been to a league forum stylistically than maybe the debates and forums you're seeing on TV. Candidates have agreed to restrict themselves to answering questions posed by the moderator. Exchanges between the candidates will be ruled out of order. This is a little challenging. We do question 1. When we're done with question 1 and go to question 2, the candidate, even though they might be really itching to, cannot return to question 2. They can address it again in their closing statements if they have something they'd like to say. And as this is a nonpartisan event, focusing on the issues and to be of the best informational forum for your viewing today, we ask the audience to not do any applause during the debate. You can do that, I'll tell you when at the end of each debate, and also no loud comments. Each forum is either 20 or 15 minutes, and we have a lot to do and want to share a lot of information for you. So with that, I think I've covered everything. We're going to get started with the Lake County Clerk Forum, so I can ask the 2 candidates to come up. Thank you. Great. Okay. We did a coin flip before the forum, and we will be opening today with Ms. O'Connor, and then we'll be rotating on the questions. As you see from the name tags here, our 2 candidates on the election ballot for Lake County Clerk. We have incumbent Carla Wyckoff is the Republican candidate, and Robin M. O'Connor is the Democratic candidate. Give me 1 second here to get our timers ready. Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon.
Oh, I have to turn it on.
Oh, you turn it on. Oh, you want to take this one? All right, good afternoon. I am really excited to be here. I have to tell you that when I decided to run for this position many months ago, I had no idea of the great people and the experiences that I would encounter. I feel truly blessed in the idea that I have been a part of this magnificent process. So I'd like to just let you know that my background in leadership, and management, and community service will give Lake County a positive collaborative relationships. I organize, restructure, and I'm known for empowering others to build what I call transformational change. I am a researcher. I enjoy learning. I seek out experts when needed. And another important quality that I feel I possess is that I'm a very, very good listener. I feel it is important for me to empower others as well as uphold the responsibilities of a quality Lake County clerk.
Thank you. Ms. Wyckoff.
Good afternoon. Is it coming? First of all, thank you to the League of Women Voters for giving us the opportunity for this forum, both for voters and candidates. We really appreciate the opportunity to talk to each other and exchange ideas. I am seeking re-election for some of the same reasons that I originally ran 4 years ago. Previously to being elected Lake County Clerk, I had served in the Lake County State's Attorney's Office for 19 years. Initially, I was a criminal prosecutor, and then for 14 years, I served in the civil division, and one of my chief responsibilities was to serve as the attorney for the county clerk's office. In the 14 years that I served as the attorney, I became very familiar with the laws that drive all of the activities in the county clerk's office, including elections, tax extension, and redemption, vital records, and voter registration. So I felt when my predecessor retired that I had a significant contribution to be able to make, and I continue to feel that I have that same ability to work positively for the residents of Lake County.
Thank you. Ms. Weiskopf, you're going to take the next question, the first question, and if it's easier, you can pull the mic out of there and pass it back and forth. Does it matter?
No, I might get to it.
Okay, good, that's fine. Okay. First question is on election security. Describe the clerk's ability and responsibility to assure the security of our elections.
Keep in mind that that is impossible to answer that question completely in a minute and a half, but I will do my best. There is no question that hacking into the elections infrastructure has become an industry unto itself in this country. So we take it very seriously in the county clerk's office. We work closely with the Lake County IT department, which is quite sophisticated, particularly compared to other county offices around the state. We're working through the Illinois Association of County Clerks with the FBI, the Homeland Security, the state police, the statewide Terrorism Intelligence Center. We have established an exchange of information where we constantly are updated on what are potential new threats and also recommendations on protocols and procedures to put in place. The three key areas are to defend, detect, and also have a backup recovery plan. Keep in mind that Lake County has what is considered by most experts the least vulnerable tabulating system in the country. Many jurisdictions are returning to that. It's the optical scan. We have the voter's original paper ballot. We also print paper tape results in the polling place on election night before we transmit results. We also have a lot of physical procedures in place to protect what I call the chain of custody and ensure that none of our ballots or our equipment are tampered with.
Thank you. Ms. O'Connor.
I want to give you a little background on my background in technology. I have administrative leadership degrees. I'm currently a candidate for a leadership educational management degree. And within those degrees, we cover often the topic of technology and management. And what I have found out is that the most important thing is to be proactive instead of reactive. I'm the leader that likes to look ahead. I am the one who welcomes new challenges so that we can be on the cutting edge. Yes, I believe that Lake County is well managed, but I also believe that we never can turn away. We always have to be ready. We always have to be looking ahead. So with my background, especially in technology, in management, and I will tell you, if you look at schools today, you will see that they are highly, at a very young age, taught many areas within technology. So technology and progressiveness is, to me, the key to always manage cyber.
Thank you. Ms. O'Connor, you'll have the next question. This is on voter participation. How has the clerk's office implemented the recent laws making it easier to register to vote? And how has this affected voter turnout? What, if any, changes would you make?
We are always looking for new ways to increase voter turnout. I'm very excited because we do have many different ways for voter registration, and yet it can still be researched and more different ways can be added. For example, I do know that the high school juniors and seniors are allowed to be election judges. This is something that I think is incredible. You are bringing the young people aboard. You are exciting them and getting them interested in their community and being a part of it, and I think that's very crucial. As far as voter turnout, this is the area that we need to tap into. We need to listen to our communities, we need to be more visible, and I also believe we need to make things easier. The website, for example, within the Lake County system, I think needs to be updated. I've worked on websites, and our website right currently needs to be a friendlier approach and needs to be more inviting so that people are not afraid to go on it. So here's what we need to do. We need to be visible, we need to be open for change, and we need to start reaching populations that have normally not been involved.
Thank you. Ms. Wyckoff.
Again, I'm going to talk really fast because there's a lot to say. Illinois, over the last 20 years, has developed some of the most inviting legislation to make voting and registration very accessible to voters. Registration is at an all-time high in Lake County with 445,000 registered voters. That's about 87%. The big problem really is turnout. In a presidential election, we typically have about 70%. Mid-year elections, about 44 to 47%. Consolidated elections this last April was 15%. We do everything we can. Voting is so accessible in the state of Illinois. We have 2 weeks of early voting with 16 early voting sites around the county. All those sites are universal. You can go to any site. We have 121 polling sites on Election Day. We also have vote by mail. Many years ago, you used to have to have a particular reason to be able to vote absentee. Now, anyone can vote absentee. That vote by mail program, we've already received 35,000 requests for vote by mail. We do need to do more outreach into the community. As my opponent has said, we do already have, for example, 250 high school students serving as election judges at this election. We do everything we can. We even received a national award for our campaign to increase the vote by mail program.
Oh, thank you. And that meant stop. Sorry.
It sounds nice.
That's right. Thank you. Thank you. Now, Ms. Wyckoff, we'll start with you again. What changes or efficiencies do you see going forward to improve the operation of the clerk's office?
I guess I feel that the Lake County Clerk's Office works at a pretty efficient rate already. We are constantly looking and we accept suggestions from all corners for improvements. Out of about a $440 million operating budget of the Lake County, the County Clerk's Office in even years, which is this year, our budget is about 4.1 million. In odd years, it's about 3.7 because elections in those years are a little bit on a smaller scale. A couple of things that we have instituted to try to be more efficient. First of all, we program and print our own ballots, which is very unusual among county clerks. We inventory, package everything. We produce all of our own videos and training materials, which has saved a lot of money. The other thing that we do internally is that everyone on the county clerk staff is cross-trained, so that although you may work in the elections department, you're also trained to work in both tax and vital records, so that at any given time, when those seasons, which are different, busy seasons, we can move people around in the office and they can adjust and fill in. Even on a daily basis, we can do that. That has cut costs, so we do not have to, for example, hire part-time or seasonal workers. We are able to be much more efficient.
Thank you. Ms. O'Connor.
There are 5 things that I would like to accomplish if I am elected. 1, I would like to create an evaluation tool for systematic changes that focus on the election procedure. And this will also include cyber protection as well as voting locations and hours. The goal, again, is to be proactive instead of reactive to implement necessary changes. I also would like to create an evaluation tool for systematic changes that focus on the management of the Lake County office and responsibilities. Inter-office connections as well as streamlining services will be studied. This goal is to increase efficiency and customer satisfaction. 3, I also feel that we continually need to study voter turnout and voter registration numbers. I do believe that we need to survey citizens, we need to have county site visits, we need to consult, and we need to have continued education. Both strengths and weaknesses need to be identified. Then, we collaboratively make goals, both short and long-range goals are created to create better turnout, voter registration, and a more efficient system. Finally, I also believe that we need to network with other county clerks, sharing information, collaborating on services, how they can be provided differently and efficiently.
Thank you. Ms. O'Connor, you'll be starting with the next question. This is in the area of vital records. Can the clerk's office play a role in reducing identity theft and promoting personal privacy by better securing vital records such as birth or marriage records or voting records?
Again, this is exactly what we've been talking about for the last few questions, is creating that cybersecurity is always being proactive, taking a look at management and all new trends within the systems and moving forward with them. Currently, the system, the systems are very well protected. The county clerks, management is done well, but that doesn't mean that we can't be better. This is one of my statements. We can always get better. And so with that answer, I'm saying that we are doing a good job, but we also need to be proactively better and more efficient.
Thank you. Ms. Wyckoff.
Our activities in the area of vital records are, again, driven by statutory requirements and restrictions. We are responsible for maintaining birth, marriage, civil union, death records, as well as all public officials file their annual statement of economic interest with us. We also do assume business name filings, and we also, now the county board has passed an ordinance, and we do registration for door-to-door solicitation in the unincorporated areas of Lake County. One of the things that we are absolutely vigilant about are vital records. The statute is very clear on who can have access, for example, to birth records, death records. Although a marriage license is a public record by statute, the marriage application is not. And we are absolutely vigilant, and we protect those records very carefully. We never release any of those records unless the individual seeking those records is authorized specifically pursuant to the statute and identification that they are able to have access to it.
Thank you. Ms. Wyckoff, next question to you. How does the clerk's office, or should the clerk's office prevent fraudulent registrations?
I'm assuming you mean voter registration.
Voter registration.
I think that Lake County is one of the model counties in the state for our voter registration activities. We have a very competent staff, and I think other counties around the state, we do constantly communicate with other counties. I'm a very active member of the Illinois Association of County Clerks. I sit on the legislation committee, and we are always exchanging information. It is often Lake County that is the model for verifying voters, making sure that we have all of the identification necessary, and we keep absolutely current on our records as well as we can. We also, pursuant to the National Change of Address Statute and the Electronic Registration Information Center legislation, we do twice a year there is audits pursuant to the National Change of Address, and 6 times a year we get information from the Electronic Registration Information Center, which compares voter registration records with, for example, records from the DMV. So we are constantly updating our registration records to keep them current.
Thank you. Ms. O'Connor.
Carla is correct in the idea that currently Lake County is a superior in that area. But I do believe, as I've said before, that we need to continue to be proactive, to make sure that we are on the cutting edge of technology and being consistently responsible.
Thank you. Time flies. This is actually the final question before we get to closing statements. Again, about voting. This is voter suppression. There has been a lot of publicity on voter suppression related to ID requirements and purging of voter rolls, etc. What, in your opinion, are the best ways to prevent voter suppression? Ms. O'Connor, you'll be first.
As we move forward in the field of voting, in the field of registration, in these particular areas, we are again adding more technology, and we are becoming more precise, and we have more eyes looking at this in the idea of being vigilant to protect. So I do honestly believe that we are on our way to protecting the vote, on the way to protecting our voters. Yet, again, we always need to continue to pursue what's next, what's ahead, and make sure that there are no cracks.
Thank you. Ms. Wyckoff.
The Lake County Clerk's Office is absolutely committed to ensuring that everyone who is entitled and eligible to vote does have the opportunity to vote. In Illinois, the only identification required to enable someone to vote in the polling place is a name, address, and we compare the signature on the ballot application with the signature that is on file for the registration record. We train our election judges to, although human beings are not Xerox machines, so their signatures may not be absolutely identical, they do need to feel comfortable that the person standing in front of them, based on that signature, is the same person who originally registered. So we do not have a voter ID requirement in the state of Illinois. However, we do, as I mentioned previously, are quite vigilant about the registration records, so anybody that's registered may vote. Also in Illinois, which changed in 2016, voters may now register to vote in the polling place on Election Day and also during early voting. The November 2016 election, we registered 5,000 people on Election Day in the polling places. So while we are vigilant about making sure that those who are eligible are voting, I still believe that Illinois is a very accessible state.
Thank you. Now for our closing statements, we'll begin with Ms. O'Connor. You have 1.5 minutes.
First of all, I want to thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak. I want you to realize that I've been a public servant for over 30 years. I was a Libertyville Township trustee for 3 terms, and I've been very active as a teacher within the teacher union and other forms of government within teachers. I am fully qualified to manage an office of this magnitude and make meaningful changes to the lives of the Lake County citizens. But I want to speak to you and let you know that I am a different type of a leader. I chose to run as a Lake County clerk because I am that gal who says yes. I'm the person who will say, I can do that. I believe I can do that job with my background. I have an extensive management background. Yes, I cannot give you facts and numbers, but once you are in this particular job, you will learn all of this, and I will learn it very easily. I have done it for many positions. So keep this in mind. I am trained in leadership. I have experienced multiple management opportunities. I welcome technology. I've lived in that land. I've served my community extensively, and I strive to be the best problem solver you will have. I am a proactive decision maker, and I love Lake County, and I have served it for many years with all of my heart and dedication. I'm asking you to give me a chance.
Thank you. Ms. Wyckoff.
And I ask you to also consider my reelection and look at my record. In the last 4 years, the county clerk's office has met significant challenges based on new legislative mandates requiring election day registration and universal voting sites and early voting. I have worked very closely with the assessor's office as well as the treasurer's office to implement a new tax management system that will be more streamlined and give the public better access. We have improved and enhanced our communication. As I mentioned, our website has won national awards. We also are vigilant about our vital records, and our voter registration is at an all-time high. I think this record, based on my education background, my law degree and MBA from Northwestern, my extensive experience the last 24 years, my work ethic, my energy level, and my participative management skills, I believe, make me worthy of consideration to continue as your county clerk.
Thank you. Well, this concludes the clerk forum, and now, audience, please give a round of applause to our candidates. Now, for the Lake County Treasurer Forum, there are 2 candidates on the ballot. Incumbent David Stolman is the Republican candidate, and Holly Kim is the Democratic candidate. And again, as before, we did a coin flip prior, and we will have Mr. Stolman will be doing the first opening, and then Ms. Kim will do the first question. So you have 90 seconds, also known as a minute and a half, for opening, questions, and closing. Mr. Stolman.
Thank you very much for League of Women Voters for allowing us to be here. My name is David Stallman. I am the treasurer for Lake County. I'm going to start with a little background of personal. My lovely wife and angel is here, Maureen Stallman. We have been married for a number of years. We have 2 lovely children, one of which lives here in Deerfield, one of which lives in Northbrook. We are lucky and blessed to have 5 grandchildren. My political background started in 1992. Prior to then, I was a graduate of University of Illinois, graduate of DePaul Law School, a very successful lawyer, both corporate as well as in my own firm. And my, again, practice started, the professional political started in 1992. I was a businessman who got elected to the county board. I ascended to various leadership positions. I was the chairman of the county finance department, the vice chairman of the county board, and ultimately the county board chairman, responsible for a budget of $500 million. The previous treasurer was retiring, I helped develop the county budget. We have a AAA bond rating, balanced budget. I thought, what a worthwhile opportunity to move in. I helped develop his budget, so I became and ran for the treasurer and have been successful in the last 4 years. The treasurer's job sends out 270,000 individual bills. We don't determine the taxes, we collect the money, we invest it extraordinarily wisely, and then we distribute the money to all the taxing bodies.
Thank you. Ms. Kim.
Thank you. My name is Holly Kim, and I'm candidate for Lake County Treasurer. First of all, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for throwing this forum today. Information is very important and is key. I grew up in Northbrook, and I actually went to Glenbrook North, right down the street here. I'm a mother of 4, a 14-year-old, a 13, a 10, and a 4-month-old, so half this campaign I was pregnant. My husband is a teacher at Waukegan High School for math, and I'm a proud product of immigrant parents. We value hard work, the importance of education, and I was that kid that got perfect attendance all the time. I worked my way through college, and after I graduated, it took so many years, but all my jobs afterwards had been in management and director level positions, and I'm very proud of that. I worked hard to earn everything I have. I started a 501c3 nonprofit in sustainability, and I ran for trustee in the village of Mundelein on the platform of transparency, and the year after I got in, we won an award for transparency. I'm also very proud of that as well. I'm running for Lake County Treasurer to increase transparency, reduce redundancy, but also I plan to give back $40,000 of my salary to civic groups as a nod to my dad, who was president of the Jaycees and also the Chamber of Commerce. I'm the recipient of the Lake County Woman of Distinction Award, and I look forward to answering your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Kim, you'll now have the first question. What are the principal, this is about investment policy. What are the principal characteristics of an effective investment policy for Lake County? How well do you believe the cash for Lake County has been managed?
First of all, I know that we have a AAA bond rating at the county. One of the things that I'd like to note, though, is that we invest more conservatively than the state of Illinois requires us to. So there's a way we can get more returns while still investing conservatively. We are the government, after all, so it's not all in stocks. That being said, that's one of the things I'd like to look into is how we can get more return for our investment. But then also, I had been requested by a few people at the door who asked me, could you make sure that we invest in ethical investments, right? They don't want to invest in anything controversial or anything like diamonds. I said I'd have to get in first to take a look. But in addition to that, I believe we can also invest in other ways as well. One of the things I'd love to do is invest in our future in economic development in Lake County, helping small business owners by making sure that we put our money in small banks that give more money to small business owners. Currently, I don't think that's what we're doing. Big banks don't like to give money to small businesses, and I want to make sure that those small business owners are well taken care of in that regard, in the most that we can do. In addition, I'd like to start a STEM program that also invests in the jobs in Lake County in the future as well. We can't bury our heads in the sand and pretend that, we're not a part of this. Economic development is all around, including having jobs for our children in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Stallman.
Lake County has an investment policy that the county board has adopted that I helped implement. I'd like to bring to everyone's attention that I was able to get the AAA bond rating, and it's been very, very difficult to not only secure but also to maintain. We are the only county within a multi-state radius, the only county to have the AAA bond rating and a balanced budget. The investments are based upon the investment policy dictated by the county board. We invest only, we don't do bitcoins, we don't do oil and gas. We are very, very secure in our funding and financing. I invest about approximately $2.5 billion and earn millions of dollars of interest. I can tell you that I haven't lost one penny, but have made millions of dollars of interest for the various taxing bodies, because after all, we get the money, we invest it, and then we disperse it out to the taxing bodies.
Thank you, Mr. Stallman. You'll have the next question. This is about administration. What changes or efficiencies do you think would improve the current operation at the Treasurer's office?
Well, considering the fact that I am the current treasurer, the operations are extraordinarily efficient. What I've done since I walked in the door was make some structural changes. I've reduced headcount. I've constantly been under budget. We have transparency par excellence. We have customer service where, again, we are cross-trained. We have actually reduced the headcount from 17 to 15. I can tell you that we are implementing a software system that Carla referred to. It was supposed to have been implemented by the county last year. It wasn't. We're still in the process of, anyone who's been through implementation of a new software system, you know it's a difficult procedure. We're involved in that. We're looking at some various ways of how to add extra banks. Right now we have probably 200 banks that you can bank in your neighborhood. You don't have to get in the car. You don't have to travel to Waukegan. We try to make it as easy as possible. We have made the website as transparent as possible, easy to navigate and easy to follow.
Thank you. Ms. Kim?
Could you repeat the question one more time? Just
Yes.
thank you.
What changes or efficiencies do you think would improve the current operation of the treasurer's office?
Operation. Okay, thank you. So first of all, I FOIA'd and took a look at how it's laid out in the treasurer's office. So it's about 15 staff members there, and I have to admit it's pretty top-heavy. In addition to having the treasurer that makes $124,000, and as you know, I'm donating back $40,000 of it. There's also a deputy treasurer and a finance director as well. So one of the things that I would like to look into is changing some of the structure, because the clerks who do all the work are in the 30,000 range, and I do believe we can expand service by having more that can do, some of the work instead of being all administrative at the top. In addition to that, I want to implement, and this might take more than a year, but something like a mobile treasurer's unit that would come out to you. So along the lines of the mobile DMV that goes out to help seniors, the mobile treasurer's unit can help by going to other towns out in Lake County. In addition to that, one of the things I wanted to look into is, why drive all the way to Waukegan if you can deposit into the treasurer's office like how you do for your bank? Currently at 2 a.m., I could take a photo of my check and deposit, in pajamas. So if that's something my bank can do, and banks are pretty stodgy, then let's look into seeing if we can do that at Lake County.
Thank you. Ms. Kim, you'll have the next question. This is about controls. Lake County recently made news when a county executive was accused of misusing a county credit card. What do you believe, which accounting principles need to be in effect and controls to prevent future abuse?
So that topic specifically is about P cards, and I'm going to put my notes aside for a second here. But the P cards have been abused. I don't know where you stand on the fence on this, but in general, they have been abused. There's about 300 of them, and no one's keeping track of all of them. That being said, back when my opponent here was chair, the Bronner Group did an independent study and an audit that said that we're being too loose on the P cards, and then made the recommendation to tighten it up. That being said, I think what's in the news right now is a product of it not being tightened up. One of the things that I would advocate for is just get rid of P cards. The companies that I've worked at, in fact, this is one of the last counties that has P cards. You can get rid of them and just ask the elected officials to turn in receipts. Not only that, if they want to go to a conference, they can currently register through the people in the staff. So it kind of gives you that second to pause before you use the card on should I or shouldn't I get the Starbucks or whatever it is. But if we remove that option, they'll have to spend their own money to get reimbursed.
Thank you. Mr. Stallman.
I'm sort of surprised they're even introducing this question because it has absolutely nothing to do with the treasurer's office. The P cards are issued by the county administrator. There's an accounting department under the county administrator's office. You have several board members here who can verify all that. From my perspective, I don't even use a P card, and clearly the P cards are not having anything to do with the treasurer's office. The treasurer's office sends out 270,000 individual bills, which we get the data from various sources, including the township assessors, the clerk's office. We compile the bill, we mail it timely, we put everything online, we receive the monies back, we diligently deposit those monies into high interest bearing accounts. We then distribute the money in a much more timely basis than the statute requires us to, and we pass out and make millions of dollars on the investments for our taxing bodies. There is nowhere within the statute that provides that we have any responsibility, involvement, or anything having to do with P cards.
Thank you, Mr. Stallman. You'll have the next question. It's been asked, to save taxpayer dollars, can you talk about consolidating the treasurer's office with another existing office? Is that a consideration?
I can tell you how highly technical the treasurer's office is and what it absolutely touches everybody in this room. If there's an error, if there's a problem with regard to the billings, if there's a problem with regard to the collections, if there's a problem with regard to making money, the taxing bodies will suffer. That means the schools, which get about 70% of your tax dollars, the villages, the park districts, the library boards, every single taxing body is expecting their money in a timely fashion and a proper accounting, and we do. We are spot on with regard to accounting. We are not top-heavy. There is no such other staff people that are involved in finance or general staff. I have eliminated various people in the department so that myself, there's one other person, and then we have other people who are involved in investments and accounting and customer service. Everybody is cross-trained so that when you walk in the door, you're met with a great customer relations. That's the first thing we want to do. You are our customer. We try to help you. We constantly have seminars on how to help with regard to the township assessments, how to appeal those. So we are there to help, and our main purpose, again, is customer service to help the taxpayers of Lake County.
Thank you. Ms. Kim.
Thank you. So it's to give comment on consolidation of the treasurer's office, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So currently at Vernon Township, I'm very proud to say that I was able to audit our budget to save us 5% on the tax levy next year. That being said, I'm also the chair of the township consolidation efforts over at Vernon Township. We're successfully putting an initiative on the ballot this November to consolidate our highway road district, and that would save money for our taxpayers there. If there is a way for us to consolidate this, I will definitely consider it. In fact, I will work with the legislators to do so. First and foremost, I'm not here to, have a career politician job. I'm here to save the taxpayers money. So if we can save $14 million by dissolving this into some other entity, and first of all, we'll have to do studies and make sure that's feasible, I will work with the senators and the state reps to do so. In the tech sector, I'm what they would call a disruptor. So I stop processes that don't work and implement new ones that do. That being said, let's think outside the box here, and I think it's time all of us agree that in the state of Illinois, we need new ideas and to save money.
Thank you. Hard to believe, but we're on to the final question before closing statements. And Ms. Kim, we'll start with you.
Okay.
This is about investment policies again and controls. How should the county treasurer select its outside advisors and vendors, including its financial institutions, investment advisors, and money managers?
So currently, internally, we have a finance director. I'm not quite sure how much of that they handle, and that's one of those that I'll have to get in to find out. That being said, I love bidding out processes, and I think that's the right way to do it. You get to see everything laid out transparently on what they can offer and how much it'll cost, plus their experience. I do believe we are in need of improvement. I would totally bid out our banking services, because who knows when the last time that was done, right? And I want us to get not only the best returns, but also the lowest fees. And there's new technology that we have to kind of think about. Like I said, taking a picture of your check to deposit it, right? So on the back end, that's something like 30 cents. Whereas if I go to my bank right now and ask to wire transfer money in to anywhere, it costs $30 in fees. So let's take a look at the back end and see where we can save money on that. Yeah, I think that's all I have to say about that one.
Thank you, Ms. Kim. Mr. Stallman.
I'm sorry, could you please repeat the question?
Yes. How should the county treasurer select its outside advisors and vendors, including its financial institutions, investment advisors, and money managers?
Right. I brought in the money managers. We have 4 independent money managers. They're actually our recommendations from our 4 banks, Wintrust, First Midwest. These are internationally recognized money managers, so it's not like it's my brother-in-law. The reality is The reality is they are very, very, very adept at what they're doing. We have a considerable amount of money that has to be watched daily, which we do. We have a considerable amount of money that we actually are not only responsible for on a 12-month basis, but we actually ladder things out so that we actually have money coming in. Look, we pay all the bills of Lake County. We are the bank for Lake County. So payroll, any kind of accounts payable, we have to have all the resources and liquidity to do everything, yet we have a terrific investment policy that allows us to make millions of dollars on investments that go out into up to 270 days.
Thank you. Now we're going to go to our closing statements, and we will begin with Mr. Stallman.
Well, thank you very much. It's been an absolute honor and privilege, and I would be honored to serve one more term. I committed to 2 terms when I took over this position, and with your blessing, I would be, again, honored to serve. I have implemented transparency. We have, I think, received, the county acknowledged we received the Transparency Awards. We're currently involved in upgrading the technology of the system. I have cross-trained everybody. I've reduced head counts. I've reduced budgets for the last 4 years. The fact of the matter is that we are looking at new technology. We have a software system that we're hopefully will be implemented fairly soon. For those of you perhaps that paid 23,000 people that prepaid 2017 taxes in 2017, we welcome that. We didn't even have a computer system. We had to sort of come up with one on the fly. We did it very successfully. We were able to put out a bill, coming up with new data, incorporating all the $269 million of prepayments. And for anybody who actually paid more, we gave you a refund check, all in the same envelope. We make it efficient. We make it effective. We run a great streamlined office. So I'm thrilled to be the treasurer for Lake County, and we'd be honored to be selected again to fulfill that task. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Kim.
Thank you. So in conclusion, I think we all know and we've seen in the news that after the chair had stepped down, we finally were able to access and open the books. That being said, I think we'll all agree the house is on fire. Not only are there the P-card abuses, which were reported on CBS 2, but also the $18.9 million in no-bid contracts that were given to a staffer's relative. The banks are even giving money to campaign accounts like my opponents, and the guard service that we use as the treasurer's office takes multiple days in order to deposit when the bank is right down the street. So one of the things I'd love to do is bid out our guard services. That being said, they also one time deposited in the wrong bank, and it took weeks to reverse that. Listen, I'm running to be the fiscal watchdog, and you want to give this job to someone who's the most hungry for it. So I got my fork, and I got my knife, and I'm ready to eat. My name's Holly Kim. I'm running for Lake County Treasurer, and I will appreciate your vote on November 6th. Thank you, and God bless.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We're now ready for the forum for Lake County Sheriff. There are 2 candidates on the election ballot for the Lake County Sheriff. Incumbent Mark Curran is the Republican candidate, and John Eidelberg is the Democratic candidate. Again, we flipped coins before, so we have our order set, and Mr. Eidelberg will make the first opening statement, and Mr. Curran will have the answer to the first question. And this forum will run 20 minutes. And then we go to the close after that point. So we're now ready to begin with the first opening statement, which will be given by Mr. Eidelberg.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is John Eidelberg, and I'm running for sheriff for Lake County. I want to thank the League of Women Voters for this opportunity to talk. After serving in the United States Marine Corps, my entire career has been devoted to law enforcement, dedicated to the protection and service of others. As the Sheriff's Department, we have seen a series of failures, including wrongful death, which have cost us taxpayers millions in settlements. It's a failure of leadership. As sheriff, I will lead by example, always taking responsibility and ensure that our men and women in uniform have the training and resources they need to act with both wisdom and compassion. They deserve a leadership that matches their hard work, and so does Lake County. Again, my name is John Eidelberg, and I'm running for sheriff for Lake County.
Thank you. Mr. Curran.
Thank you. I also would like to thank the League of Women Voters for having this forum here today. As you mentioned, my name is Mark Kern. I'm the Lake County Sheriff. I've been your sheriff since 2006. Prior to becoming sheriff, I was a prosecutor for most of my career at the county, state, and at the federal level as well. Went into private practice for a brief period of time where I represented murderers and corporations. Was elected sheriff in 2006, and the office that I took over was much like many other sheriff's offices throughout the country. Sheriff's offices historically have been a patronage place, and that's why there's such a big fight for them wherever you go in America. Whether it's Republicans or Democrats, or whether it's a primary, trying to get their people and dole out the jobs. I've changed that culture and professionalized the office. I've done it in the model of a good to great organization by getting the best people. You look through our office in terms of the hirings that we've made in recent history and how the office is headed in the right direction. We've been a model in terms of transparency as we've gone from the warrior to the servant leadership, working on opioids and crisis intervention training. We have essentially been out in the community. I've been recognized as being a leader, as I've been endorsed by 32 mayors. As the Daily Herald, the only paper to address our race so far, said the office is headed in the right direction. Thank you. I'm Mark Kern. I'm your Lake County Sheriff, and I look forward to continuing to serve you.
Thank you, Mr. Curran, and you'll have the first question. What advances will you bring to the sheriff's office in the next 4 years?
We'll continue to lead the sheriff's office in terms of the technology that's available. But one of the things I'd like to mention, what I've done in most recent history is we've achieved what's known as the triple crown of accreditation. We are accredited in the jail through American Correctional Association, the National Commission on Correctional Health Care, which oversees your mental health component, and we're also accredited with our sworn officers through the CLIA, which is the Commission on Accreditation of Law Enforcement Agencies. Only 44 offices, sheriff's offices in the country have that triple crown of accreditation. It ensures that your policies are top shelf, your training is everything it needs to be, you administer discipline appropriately, that you hire correctly, and in the end, you're running an office that an objective third party comes in, looks at, and says it's headed in the right direction. We have to continue to be the leader in opioids. It's a crisis, there's no question about it. I was the first one in Lake County to draw attention to it, really, as I was the coroner at the time, back in 2011, and I was recognized on the floor of Congress as bringing attention to the opioid crisis. We'll continue to lead with mental health, crisis intervention training. We were the first office in Lake County to full out pursue it. We have a third of our office, not just sworn, but all through the office that have crisis intervention training, and our goal is to have 100%.
Thank you. Mr. Eidelberg.
Well, thank you there. Mark, you mentioned keeping...
Oh, let's bring the mic over to you there.
Thank you very much. You talk about accreditation. Accreditation doesn't save lives. They don't save Lake County taxpayers from paying for your mistakes. Keeping Lake County safe is the responsibility of the sheriff. You can't even keep the jail safe from the death in the jail. What I propose is education and training for the individuals within the sheriff's department. I believe in innovation and bringing technology and bringing our officers in date with the community, and also give them the resources and the tools to do their job. They don't have the resources and tools, and we need to be leading by leadership. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Eidelberg, you'll have the next question. You'll start. It is about inmate security. What role does the sheriff play in securing the safety of inmates and those detained by officers? And what would you do to make the jails safer?
Once I become sheriff, the first thing I would do is overhaul the jail. We have issues in the jail. We've had way too many deaths in the jail, and that's unacceptable for our community. I believe in starting from the top with the supervisor and making changes. We need to do education and making our community safe, because we cannot afford any more lawsuits, and the death is unacceptable as being the sheriff of Lake County. You're supposed to safeguard our community, and that's not what's happening. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Curran.
I think anyone that follows me and has historically know that I'm somebody that has great compassion for the inmates. I'm the sheriff that spent a week in his own jail 10 years ago, in a story that went national. I was a lawyer that represented Illinois Department of Corrections, Illinois State Police. I know where liability exists. I was a lawyer that was recognized in Martindale-Hubbell with the highest rating, AV, was recognized by super lawyers as one of the top lawyers out there. Ultimately, when you're an accredited agency, your training is at the top shelf, and we have had the very best in training. The nature of law enforcement is that it's a tougher job than most, but there's people in law enforcement that just aren't good. That's a reality. Just like there are people in carpentry and there's people in every profession, what have you. So what you do when you have a sheriff is you want somebody that holds people accountable. I'm the guy that has disciplined people, that has seen that they've been fired, that has held them accountable time and time again. And as a result of that, that's why you see former sheriffs that come around, follow my campaign just to be with Mr. Eidelberg. I'm not somebody that's made him a lot of friends in law enforcement, but I've done the right thing, and that's why the papers understand, and that's why historically they've always looked at me as somebody that at the end of the day, he's going to hold people accountable. He's not going to circle the wagons. He's not going to say, well, us police have to stick together. He recognizes that the police are there to serve the citizenry, and that's what I've done.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Curran, you'll have the next question. This is about interagency communication. Communication among law enforcement agencies is important when there are major crimes, lost children, etc. How would you improve interagency communications to benefit the public?
Right, so I created the first ever Lake County Gang Task Force, and we work great with our partners, have always worked well with our partners, and I think that's very important. And I see Scott Lazar, who's a former U.S. attorney here today. He's not here for me, I just noticed he's in the crowd. But the importance is that we don't, I'm the sheriff and I don't like my federal partners or I don't like my state partners. We have to work with each other, and that's essentially how we keep the county safe. And I have done that. I've had wonderful relations with ATF, FBI, right down the line, and they contribute to our task force. Additionally, we're moving in the direction in terms of, if you will, bringing our 911 system into a more professional and a more collaborative effort, where essentially we'll all be able to hopefully get on the same CAD at some point in time. And that CAD is the computer-aided dispatch. We're all sharing information. That is my goal. It has been my goal, and will continue to do so. Additionally, in terms of working together with other agencies, when you have 32 mayors from throughout the county endorsing your campaign, they've talked to their police chief. They know the status of the office. They know who's helping to keep their local community safe as well. And that's why I've been recognized. I have not been a partisan sheriff, never will be, and will always look in terms of the citizens we serve being first.
Thank you. Mr. Eidelberg.
Yes, ma'am. Could you repeat the question?
Yes. Communication among law enforcement agencies is important when there are major crimes, lost children, etc. How will you improve interagency communication to benefit the public?
That's a great question. And the reason why I say that is this. I'm a retired federal agent from the Treasury Department, over 32 years of government service. I have been trained by the best law enforcement agency in America, which is the FBI, Secret Service, Customs. So I have a great working relationship with these federal departments, and also I have a very good working relationship with police officers through the state, because I'm currently the president of the Illinois Police Association, and I have a great rapport with the community. And I think to make our community safe, we need to have that working relationship. And I want to talk about technology. The current technology within the Sheriff's Department is outdated. We need to update the communication package within the Sheriff's Department. We need to embrace technology. We must embrace advanced technology to make our officers safe within our community. We need to do global information sharing system mapping, organization information, and displaying graphic information in a manner that can help us utilize and reduce the crime and identify crime patterns within the community.
Thank you. Mr. Heidelberg, you'll have the next question. This is on mental health. How can the sheriff's office assure that officers will interact safely with citizens who have mental health issues?
That's a great question. Mental health is an issue within our community, and when you're the sheriff of Lake County, you have individuals who may have medical or mental health issues, and they're in the custody of your jail. And you have to have the resources and the people to identify the individuals that have mental health, and we have to educate them and train them. And we have to get medical staff in the jail to help with the individual with mental health conditions. And I believe in that. Every life is important, and we should not lose another life in our jail.
Thank you. Mr. Curran.
Thank you. As I mentioned before, essentially what we're doing right now is crisis intervention training. And the historical model with law enforcement was take control, and you do that by screaming, get on the ground, and what have you. And essentially we learned that escalates the situation, especially when the suspect or the individual has a mental illness. Crisis intervention training, which deals with a lot of role model scenarios, deals with de-escalating, bringing it down. And we have done that. As I said, we have about a third of our office right now that's been accredited, and if anybody's a member of Lake County United or is familiar with them, you could talk to them about how the sheriff's office has been leading in that aspect of crisis intervention training. We would have everybody CIT trained if the state would move in terms of offering more training. But we've been the ones that have been directing the training, but we can't put the classes on by ourselves. In addition to CIT training, we're out there in the community building the relations. We have them in the jail. We have all kinds of different programming throughout Lake County in dealing with addictions, and mental health is a component of that. The reality is, though, that the jails have been the dumping ground, and I'm somebody that's done everything possible, and I wish this was a longer forum, to try to decrease the jail population.
Thank you. Now keep the mic, Mr. Curran. This next question is on officer discipline. What is the process for investigating disciplinary actions against Lake County Sheriff officers? Do you have any plans for any change or improvement of these policies?
Thank you. I've been the sheriff for 11 years, and for 11 years I've been under budget. I've given money back to the county. I deal with, on a regular basis, 8 different bargaining units. Almost everybody that works for the sheriff's office is a member of a union. And essentially, so a union employee has significantly more protection than a private sector employee. But despite that, we haven't used it as an obstacle to say, you know what, they have all these rights, what have you. This is a bad police officer. He's out there violating rights. He's dangerous to the citizens. He's dangerous to our larger culture. He's dangerous to the rights of the accused. Let's just let it go. We don't want to deal with it. Plus, one of the hardest things to do is discipline law enforcement. Private sector, you say, you're done. You say, okay, I'll go find another job. Law enforcement, a gun and a badge, that's the only way they've made a living. They're not going to make $100,000 doing something else that easy. It becomes a war where they're going to come back at you. So you need a strong individual to be able to do that, to stand up to them and say, wrong, we're going to fire you, or we're going to do whatever is dictated by the situation. I have a strong record of that, and I think everybody recognizes that as far as discipline, I have been a leader. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Eidelberg. Yes.
Could you repeat the question?
Yes. What is the process for investigating disciplinary actions against Lake County Sheriff officers? If you think there are to be changes, what would there be in improvements to these policies?
My belief is this. I think everybody should be treated fair and equally. I also do not believe under the current administration what's happening with the deputies is that they're making mistakes and they're called in and asked to sign a last right letter to give up their union bargaining rights or be terminated. That's unacceptable. I believe in the right for people to work. I believe that if someone makes a mistake, they should be treated fairly and equally, and that punishment should be fair and equally for everyone within the sheriff department. I don't believe anybody should be intimidated or threatened to possibly lose their job. I understand people make mistakes. They need to be held accountable for, and they need to answer for their mistakes because they are a reflection of our sheriff department, which is a reflection of me as the sheriff. And that's what I believe in. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Eidelberg, next question for you. Do you believe that, trying to read the handwriting, sorry. What would you do to make changes with the major crimes unit of the sheriff's office? Yeah.
I think the major crime unit is a great unit, but I also believe that we should have designated people working that unit. I do not believe that we have officers who are primary designated to those particular units. We should have individuals that are assigned to that. And also under the major crime, we have other departments within there. But I also believe that the deputies who are working these major crime task force or these school task force, they're not designated to these particular programs. And I believe we should have people designated to the program just like with the school safety program. We should have officers that is dedicated to the school safety program. Some of these officers are right now are working different jobs within the sheriff department, and the safety of our community, our children, is very important. And I think we should have dedicated people to work those particular programs. Thank you.
Thank you.
So the Major Crimes Unit, the Lake County Major Crimes Task Force, is not the sheriff's office. It's an independent office. It's really, other than contributing members to the task force, the sheriff's office does not have anything to do with it. I am a board member of it, but I have one vote, and I'm not the president or the head of it. The task force has been an embarrassment in many ways over the course of years. Not just that, it's something that it's brought dishonor to Lake County. People were wrongfully convicted. When Dave Stolman was the chairman of the Lake County Board, Dave and I went into Mike Waller's office, and there was one prosecutor in particular that was responsible for many of the wrongful convictions, and we said this guy has to be fired. And ultimately, went back and forth. I ultimately was the one that called for this particular prosecutor to either step down or be fired. Mike Waller had 2 years left in his term at that point in time, and he was the attorney for the Lake County Sheriff's Office. He never said another word to me. And I know I did the right thing, but that's what it takes. Is I sit on the board. I tell the members of the task force they shouldn't be doing this, but you need somebody that's with courage to do that. I've had that record of courage. I've had the record to stand up for wrongdoing in Lake County.
Thank you. We're now on to the final question before closing statements, and we'll start with Mr. Curran. This is about hiring. How would you promote diversity in hiring in the sheriff's office?
Thank you. That's a great question, and I've worked very hard towards that. One of the things in terms of raising the bar is I talk about that good to great model. You can have the best policies, the best practices, the best training, the best supervision, and discipline people accordingly. But if you don't hire the right people, you're going nowhere as an organization. So we have stepped it up in terms of recruiting. I'll give one example. Rebecca Loeb, who was on Live PD, and she became a national celebrity. She responded to a burglary in Libertyville. I backed her up. She has a law degree from Chicago, Kent, and I recruited her to work for our office. And she loves it. We had another officer that we hired that has a captain in the engineer, a captain in the Army with an engineering background. Those are the type of people that are coming in. I've hired 12 former chiefs of police in Lake County to come work for me at one point or another. That's not the way they used to do it. It doesn't make people happy. They don't like outsiders coming in. But if you want to be the best agency and you want to do the best for your citizenry, you go out and you get the best talent you can. I have done that. I will continue to do that. Our numbers in terms of minorities and women have gone up significantly under my leadership, and will continue to do so.
Thank you. Mr. Eidelberg.
Could you repeat the question again?
How would you promote diversity in hiring in the sheriff's office?
I think the Sheriff Department should be a reflection of the community that is served. I believe that we should reach out to the community and talk to young people, go to different colleges or universities, and also try to get our community within the young people to come and work for the Sheriff Department. But also, reference to the comment about diversity by our current sheriff is this. I believe hiring is very important, but I also believe that everybody who take the test should be promoted, and we should not just promote people based on their gender, because we need to fill a quota. We need to hire the most qualified individual for those positions, and that's what I believe in. And I believe in making the community safe. We should have a diversity of all people from all walks of life to make our community safe.
Thank you. We'll now do the closing statements. Mr. Eidelberg, you're first. You have 90 seconds.
As a federal agent, I know the advantage of cutting-edge technology to integrate into my plan to be more proactive and responsible sheriff office for each and every one of us. That is why I'm running for sheriff, to give the men and women of the Sheriff Department true leadership, mission focus, to achieve their changes and demand goals of our first responders, and to be absolutely accountable to each and every one. I remember the oath I took to serve and protect, and that's what I believe in as being a sheriff of Lake County, to serve and protect and always put the community first before me. It's about leadership and dedication and making our community safe for everyone. And I also wanted to make the comment about being endorsed in 39 mayors who were supposed to support Mr. Kern. Those 39 mayors doesn't exist. There's only 16, maybe half of that's around. Again, my name is John Eidelberg, and I want to be your next sheriff for Lake County. Thank you.
Thank you. 32 mayors, meaning mayors and village presidents, 32 community heads. So essentially, I would also ask for your support. When you think of what happened in terms of the sheriff's office, the office I took over and the office direction we're headed in, I think people that are on the inside recognize the fact that we now have the Triple Crown and accreditation. It's not me telling you how great we are. It's the fact that these independent bodies, these accrediting agencies, the gold standards in accreditation, have come in, looked at our office, and said that, boy, that office is headed in the right direction. We're very proud of our office, and that's why I put us out there on Live PD. We're on the Women in the Law right now. We've been featured on countless programs, and we continue to put our office out there because of the direction in wanting to show people just how good we're getting. We continue to lead in terms of transparency. You know, I don't hide videos. The media knows that, and that's why they love dealing with me. I answer the questions. I release videos. Every officer in the jail and on the sworn side has a body camera. We were at the cutting edge of that, first essentially to do that. And we do that because we want to protect the officers from false allegations, but we also want to protect the citizenry. I'm not somebody that's ever going to tell you that because they have a gun and a badge, they're a good person. It's just not the reality of the world. We continue to move in terms of that servant-minded leadership. That's why we lead on CIT training, why we've taken the lead on opioids and community policing. Thank you, and my name is Mark Curran.
Thank you very much. And please offer your applause to the candidates. One announcement. I have been given one announcement here, that there actually is a third write-in candidate for sheriff, Eric Sinderman, and the league regrets we did not know of his candidacy when we planned this event. Just if he's here, if he would like to stand. Don't know. Okay. You're Eric Sinderman? Okay, thank you. Everybody in here who needs to be in here? One quick question, we do have some rules. Is anybody here for these forums that was not here for the previous 3 countywide forums? Any new? Spare you the rules again? Okay. They'll probably just throw in a couple. So if you have any questions, we have a lot of questions up here already, just raise your hand and the league volunteers will come by with cards and pick up your cards. This forum for Lake County Board Districts 11 and 21, we'll have 40 minutes and then closing statements. You don't have to keep track of this, but to know how it's working, we did a coin toss. So we have 11th District seated next to the 21st District, and we'll be rotating answers first within each race, the 11th and 21st. But then about midway through, we'll still be with the same candidates and their opponents, but we'll be flipping 11th and 21st District to hopefully make it more variety. All right. Just a reminder, too, this is a nonpartisan event focusing on issues, and we ask audience to refrain from applause or loud comments during the forum. Ready? Okay. Very good. This forum features the Lake County Board candidates for both the 11th and 21st districts. The 2 candidates on the ballot for the 11th district are incumbent Paul Frank, who is the Democratic candidate, and Rebecca Zeidman is the Republican candidate. There are 2 candidates for the 21st district. Incumbent Ann B. Main is the Republican candidate, and Susan Malter is the Democratic candidate. Going to start with our opening statements. Both opening answers to the questions and closing can be up to 1.5 minutes. And our timers will put up a card at 30 seconds and then at stop. So always be sure to check over there. The first opening statement will be by Rebecca Zeidman. Oh, turn the mic on.
Hi, my name is Becky Zeidman, and I'm running for Lake County Board in District 11. It's Highland Park, Highwood, and Deerfield. I've lived in Highland Park for 13 years. The reason I'm running is because I love my community. I work at Glenkirk, which is an agency for adults with developmental disabilities, which I think will make me an asset to the board. What I like about our community is that we welcome people with disabilities with open arms. There's so many things about our community that I really like, but there are some things that we need to improve upon. For example, I know some people say they're leaving Illinois because of high taxes, and I met a woman who wants to move to another suburb because of high taxes. I also met a couple, an older couple, who are retired, and they're living in the home where they raise their kids, and they're worried that they might not be able to stay there. So I want to make sure that we're transparent so that you can see where your tax dollars are going to. I want to work on the board to reduce the portion of your tax bill that pertains to the Lake County services and the forest preserves. And I also want to work with legislators to put a cap on property tax based on the value of your home. In addition, I want to address the opioid crisis. The drug Narcan has been very helpful. It revives those who have overdosed, and it's saved a lot of lives, but I think we need to be proactive and prevent drug abuse, and we need to have education so that people who are addicted to drugs get the help that they need, and also let people know the consequences of drug abuse.
Thank you. Mr. Frank.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Thanks to League of Women Voters for including me here today. Thanks to the United Christ Methodist Church for hosting us in this great space. Thanks, Judy, Marlene, Rosemary, all your volunteers. Obviously, your mission about empowering people with knowledge and confidence to participate in our elections is vital, so thanks again. My name is Paul Frank. I'm the county board member for the 11th District. I've been on the county board for just under 2 years. I was first elected in 2016. Prior to that, I served almost 6 years on the Highland Park City Council. I'm a public policy professional. I work previously on student financial aid and currently on healthcare issues. I have a master's in public service management from DePaul, a BA in political science from the University of Missouri-Columbia. I live in Highland Park with my wife, Mandy, our 2 teenagers, Jane and Jonah. And as Becky said, the 11th District includes most of Highland Park, all of Highwood, and a small portion of Deerfield. I'm seeking re-election to the county board because we need to make our county government greener, cleaner, and more transparent. My campaign committee does not accept contributions from Lake County employees, employees of the Forest Preserve District, or contractors of Lake County or the Forest Preserve District. I mention that because I think it's important to recognize that our county government is not transparent enough in terms of some of the ways that we conduct our contracting. Some of those issues have been brought to light this year, and I think it's important that we're having really positive discussions about how we can improve our transparency regarding contractors.
Thank you. Ms. Main.
Thank you. I want to again thank the League of Women Voters, and I want to thank all of you, citizens, for staying and listening and becoming informed and going back to your community. I'm an independent leader with a record of innovation and success and achievements. I've been honored to be able to serve my community. My mother served her community as an elected official. My grandmother served her community. My great-grandmother would have served her community, but women couldn't vote, and so she was out marching, asking President Wilson to give women the right to vote. I've had major accomplishments in the area of transportation, water conservation and quality, environmental protection and restoration, regional and local trail connections. I've implemented strong financial changes at the Forest Preserve and helped create the 100-year vision that the Lake County Forest Preserve developed for all of Lake County. I have a PhD in biochemistry, which sometimes makes people's eyes glaze over at a party, but I think that these skills, these analytical skills, are very important. There's a number of issues facing us today that require the ability to look at all of the information and not to pick and choose the data that you want to use to make an argument. You need to look at the totality. I've taught biology at Lake Forest College for 25 years. I have an excellent understanding of not only District 21, but the needs of the entire Lake County. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Malter.
Good afternoon. Thank you to Dr. Brown, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this event. Thank you to everyone for coming today. I appreciate this opportunity to talk about my campaign for truth in taxation, ethical governance, and less waste in Lake County spending. I have been in public service my whole life. I started practicing law as an assistant state's attorney. I founded a nonprofit to help children succeed in school by finding services for their families, like glasses when they could not afford them, and drug treatment for parents whose needs created distractions from schoolwork. I've devoted my legal practice to fighting abuses of power, like insurance companies who deny valid claims, and like bullies who file lawsuits for extortion. My husband Bruce and I raised our children in Lincolnshire, where we have lived for 16 years. I was inspired to seek elective office by the failures that we continue to witness at every level of government. While I appreciate my opponent's 14 years of service, her failures in the areas that strike me as urgent have led me to challenge her position in the Lake County Board. Tax increases when the budget does not require them are unacceptable. Government contracts to undisclosed insiders should not be possible. Spending on capital projects with millions swept into funds without public approval is disturbing. This tax and spend behavior at our expense should not be tolerated, certainly not when elected leaders hide relationships and the flow of money. I will devote myself to money-saving and ethical reforms that are long since due. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we will begin the question portion, and the first question will go to Mr. Frank. And this is a general, wide question about challenges. What do you think are the biggest challenges facing Lake County right now?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you. So, from the county board's perspective, I was happy to earlier hear a discussion about diversity. At Lake County, it's not just about numbers and the number of people that you hire. It's also about making sure that it's the right environment. If you've ever been the only man on a panel, or the only woman at a place of employment, or the only person of color at a place of employment, you recognize that it's, hey, I'm the number, but it's also the environment. Like, do you feel welcome? Are you comfortable? Are you able to lead, grow, and succeed? And I think we can do better at Lake County. I think that's an important challenge that was discussed earlier. I also think that, truthfully, we need to really reform some of our policies. We have discovered this year, and these were extremely important and valid questions brought to us by a board member, why do we have contracts that are owned by family members of county staff? And none of us knew that. Now, some board members will say, well, I knew that, or you should have known that. But the truth of the matter is, these contracts and these relationships were not disclosed. And that board member was attacked, was shouted at. And the board acting chair said, I'm going to protect our staff and I'm going to protect our board. The truth of the matter is, we need to be protecting taxpayers. That was the wrong response. We need to embrace these questions. We need to improve our policies like the state of Illinois have done, like other counties have done. We can do better.
Thank you. Ms. Zeidman.
I think that the biggest challenge in Lake County Board is being transparent and letting people know where their tax dollars are being spent.
Thank you. Ms. Malter.
I think the three most important challenges have to do with truth in taxation, ethical governance, and the waste in county spending. My opponent, in her 14 years of service, has voted to raise our taxes the 13 times that we did have a tax increase in county spending and county taxes. The last year, when there was an anticipated freeze by the state in taxes, there was a discussion, even though we didn't need an increase in our budget or have an increase in our budget, the county decided to do an increase in our taxes because of the coming anticipated freeze. The day before the vote, we learned that there was going to be no freeze, and nevertheless, the county voted to increase our taxes when they knew we didn't need that in our budget. I think, 30 seconds. I think also concerning in terms of truth in taxation is the sweeping of money from specific funds that have been allocated and approved by the public, and tens of millions of dollars every year are swept into a general fund for capital projects. And people are stunned to hear that, and that no one goes back to the people to make sure that those things are approved of.
Thank you. Ms. Main.
Thank you. I think there are a few issues. I appreciate Member Frank bringing up about our discussions that we've had at the vendor, and we had a fruitful discussion at our last county board meeting, and we are moving forward with that. I do want to make clear that when there are lowest responsive, and no time is an elected official ever involved in selecting who wins a bid. The low bid is set by law, and these so-called no-bid contracts are actually professional services, and it is required by the state and federal law that you are not allowed to go out for lowest responsible bid in these things. So we are following state and federal policy. I think the state, so we are working on that, and there's, no matter what you're doing, there's always room for improvement, and I embrace that, and I think I did miss some of those meetings, family wedding, and I've been excited to get caught up and bring my perspective to some of the changes that need to happen. I think one of the biggest things that's facing us is a strong state government. Without a solvent, fiscally responsible state government that has a plan to address pension debt, we are trying to plug holes. In fact, the state, while there was not a pension, while there was not a property tax freeze, they did put a 2% surcharge on our RTA tax monies. They did take away 10% of the property, of the income tax. So in fact, the state of Illinois did unfairly impinge on on the ability of Lake County government to run its services.
Thank you. The next question will go first to Ms. Zeidman. And this is on property tax. Can you discuss the advisory public question placed on the ballot by the county board regarding a 1% tax added to the property tax bills with proceeds going to the state of Illinois? Will this be confusing to voters?
Yeah, I think it might be kind of confusing, but I agree on the ban.
Thank you, Mr. Frank.
Yeah, it's clearly confusing. It's a ridiculous question. We had a long discussion about it at the county board, and there's a lot of political accusations that get made sometimes about party control. And I could tell you something, as a Democrat who's on the county board, I've never once had the county board, the county Democratic chairman, who's Senator Terry Link, has never called me and asked me to vote a certain way on anything. And in this question, on this ballot question, the county board members of the other party were asked to vote for it by their Republican leadership. They were said, we need this on the ballot. We need this to help get Republican voters to turn out and vote. Now the question is ridiculous. It's based on a newspaper article that said, hey, maybe the state should do this. There's no legislation pending. None of the candidates for governor have said we're going to do this. It's really a political gimmick. I was particularly disappointed by it because I, earlier in the year, asked the county board to have a discussion about should we take a position on a statewide ban on assault weapons. This is something that's important. We banned assault weapons in Highland Park. They've done it here in Deerfield. It's something that's important to the community. And for us to be able to not have that discussion because it didn't align with our rules, it bothered me greatly. But then the county board said, well, this question is fitting with our rules, even though it has nothing to do with county government. So the question is great because, yeah, it's a confusing and ridiculous ballot question, and it's a waste of space. People can vote for it if you want, but what you should really do is vote.
Thank you. No, thank you. Ms. Main.
Thank you. Well, I agree with my colleague here, Member Frank. I was not there I was at my son's wedding. And I agree. I think that there are confusing things. It is confusing. I've had people call me and I say, I'm on my county phone. I can't talk to you about this. So I think it's confusing. And I don't think it is right that we have other issues that we're supposed to put on the ballot that don't necessarily pertain to county government. And I think that what we see is government overreach in so many areas, that government tries to go into areas that is not their purview. And I think we are better served when government focuses on what their core mission is and takes care of their core mission. So I wasn't there, and I agree with my colleague here.
Thank you. Ms. Malter.
No one called. I still have time. No one called me.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, I thought that was a confusing question and unnecessary to be on the ballot. I thought it was surprising. It's surprising when things are put on the ballot that are of no value, when we seek sometimes to put something on the ballot that is very meaningful to our electorate that doesn't get put on. And earlier this year, there was a Senate bill that had to do with whether Lake County would be able to elect our assessor. It was Senate Bill 2544. And it had passed the House and the Senate in Illinois and needed only the governor to sign it. But our Lake County board, including Ann, but not including Paul, who didn't vote for it, but voted for an mandatory veto to prevent, so that we wouldn't be able to put on our ballot the option of electing our assessor. And it's something that was meaningful enough that thousands of people signed a petition to put it on the ballot, and there was a partisan determination that it wouldn't be useful. And it's disappointing, and my opponent talked about her oath to the Constitution and totally misstated the meaning of the oath. Thanks.
Thank you. The next question is going to go first to Mr. Frank. This is about infrastructure. There's a lot of concern about infrastructure at the state and national level, roads, bridges. How is Lake County doing? Any plans, suggestions for the future?
It's an important question. I think our county staff, in terms of the transportation division, they're very competent. They understand our needs. They put things on a plan, like our municipalities and local governments do as well. Truthfully, I don't think we're investing enough in infrastructure. I think it comes down to a fundamental budgeting question within Lake County. Truth of the matter is, our county budget is over-reserved. We have too much money in the bank. We shouldn't be asking taxpayers for more money when you're sitting on 40% reserves. And that's exactly what the majority party did last year when they passed a $4 million tax increase. And the only purpose of doing that was, number one, because they were afraid that we wouldn't be able to raise taxes this year, and number two, this year's an election year. So unnecessary tax increases, over-reserving, they impede your ability to do all the things you need to do with the designated funds, which is the source of the question, investing in capital in Lake County.
Thank you. Ms. Zeidman.
Yeah, I think it's important that we only spend the money that we have. We don't want to be wasteful with the tax dollars. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Malter.
Could you repeat the question?
Yes. There's a lot of concern about infrastructure at the state and national level, roads and bridges. How is Lake County doing? Any suggestions for the future?
Yes. Route 53 is, there's an expansion plan to extend Route 53 between Lake Cook Road and 120. And we've had set aside a corridor since the 1960s in order to put in this mega highway. There's no further reason, and it is no longer compelling to put in that highway. But because the unions and developers who stand to make an enormous amount of money from that project continue to push for it, it is stopped in the ongoing updating and maintenance of our infrastructure. And although there's always things that are being improved, our east-west streets have been on hold waiting for 53. There are a lot of things that have not happened because of something that even Ann agreed at the Lake County Farm Bureau, we're never going to have 53 go through. We should decommission it so we can move forward and make Lake County current and have the right kind of transit.
Thank you. Ms. Main.
Thank you. Route 53 has nothing to do with Lake County infrastructure. It was a state project, and then it was now it's currently a toll authority project. This past week, CMAP, Go to 2050, which is regional planning, put the Route 53 on its, they put it aside because of concerns. So that has nothing to do with our infrastructure. Infrastructure is really important. You need to know that the bridges and roads that you're on are safe. You need to know that your children are safe, and businesses need to know that they can move goods and services in a safe and timely fashion. Treasurer Stolman is here. He was a strong advocate for our transportation improvement and our sales tax. We're the only county that dedicates 100% of our 1/4% sales tax to transportation. In our next 5-year plan, we have over $578 million in road projects. We invest in infrastructure. We look at preservation, modernization, expansion. Preservation is number one. We always, every 4 years, every county road is assessed to see if it is safe, and we adjust constantly so that your roads are safe. We do the same thing with our bridges. Modernization is our next goal. So I'd say we're doing the same thing with our sewer systems. We make sure that that's an enterprise fund, that they are funded so that we can take care of the water and the sewer system. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, now I'm going to do the flip of the districts. So Ms. Main, you're going to have the next question. Okay, then we'll come around. Follow. This is about stormwater. Do you support increased funding for the Lake County Stormwater Management Commission's efforts in light of increased rain events?
Yes, clearly we see that climate change is happening. It's not a question. I'm a scientist, and I've been a member of Stormwater Management, and we have invested millions of dollars, and our staff is amazing at leveraging buyouts, working with the federal government, and removing those repetitive structures, those structures that are flooded repetitively. We got rid of the Gurney Grade School and took care of a lot of things in that way. We have a number of watershed plans, and that's definitely something that we need to work on. It's important to note that 80% of the land in Lake County is public. That is your land. And it's incumbent upon all of us to do what we can do on our own property. If you have a lot of turf grass, you are contributing to flooding. You need to get mulch around those trees. You need to have more native plants. That's what we've done in our yard. We are all part of the problem, and we're all part of the solution. We are not going to be able to build our way out of these unusual rain events when we get 5 or 6 inches of rain in a few hours. You can simply not build storm sewers large enough. So, but we do need to work and improve flow. We've got a number of projects at the county and working with stormwater management, looking at both local and more regional. We're very cooperative. We're working with the watershed, I won't say it, but we are very cooperative.
Thank you. Ms. Malter.
As my husband can attest, I have long wanted to make all of our lawn change into not grass at all, but exactly the kind of things that Ann's talking about that people should do as individuals. But I'm not surprised to hear Ann putting the onus onto individuals and not taking great responsibility for the county doing what it should be doing. I think that the development and the push for development and the interest in working for commerce over individual taxpayers and developing land and getting rid of wetlands or getting rid of, like where Melody Farms is, they put in a huge development where we have a failing mall right across the street from there. And when you get rid of permeable land, you're taking away our natural ability to deal with floods. And I applaud the work and the intelligence that's been put into management of stormwater. I think I haven't delved deeply enough to know whether we've worked with cisterns and additional types of things that I think would be useful. But I'm disappointed and surprised to hear that Ann wants us to all look at our lawns first when our leaders should really be leading in this. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Zeidman.
Yeah, I believe that the county should do whatever it needs to do to manage the storm water to decrease flooding.
Thank you. Mr. Frank.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the question. I think any of us who read about the UN Intergovernmental Panel's climate change report recently, we're all concerned. This was basically the scientists from around the world pulling a fire alarm, saying that we are warming as a planet faster than we thought, and we're heading towards the point of no return. And flooding is one of the impacts that impacts a lot of us, but some of the other impacts are going to be a lot more catastrophic. If anybody wants to read the abstract of the report, I did post it on my campaign website, which is paulfranklakecounty.com. We all do have a responsibility to reduce stormwater flooding impacts. It falls on all of us, it falls on our governments, it falls on our leaders. That's why it's so maddening to those of us who know better to see the corrupt bargain that's taken place with the Foxconn development immediately north of our state line, where Trump and his corrupt EPA administrator Pruitt waived a majority of standard regulations for Foxconn, allowing them to siphon $7 million of Lake Michigan water a day, waiving the normal air and pollution regulations, and stormwater and flooding impact regulations, some of which we are still measuring and about to estimate. But if any of you have seen the YouTube video, there's clearly a dramatic runoff already happening into the Des Plaines and Skokie River watersheds from Foxconn.
Thank you. The next question is to go first to Ms. Malter, and this is on transparency. What measures do you support to improve transparency in county board actions?
I'm so happy that that's the question where I'm first. I'm very concerned about transparency in the Lake County Board. I saw in Ann's mailing today, well, it came yesterday, that she now supports taping of all committee meetings. But Ann's been the leader of the Forest Preserve and of Public Works and Transportation, where she hasn't been doing videotape of meetings. I think all of these, we need to be making everything as accessible as possible to people who can't drive to Waukegan to see how our decisions are being made. Also, what I've been pushing for is disclosures and ethical ordinances. There's when our vendors, when people want to contract with the government, they should include whether they've made a donation to anyone who sits in elective office in that government, and they should include any relatives of theirs in the government. We shouldn't be surprised at hidden relationships of anyone who's getting our county money. And we shouldn't be concerned that insiders and friends and family of people who serve on the county board are the people that are getting contracts, regardless of whether they're the person who first points out the name of the contractor. People know each other in a county, and we should expect much better from our government leaders. Ann's been in for 14 years. She hasn't pushed for this in all this time, and it's the number one thing that I want to work on.
Thank you. Ms. Main.
Thank you. Actually, I have asked in the past for things to be videotaped, and I supported them, and I encouraged the Committee of the Whole meeting, which I think is actually probably the most productive meeting, to be videotaped, and I did not get support from members of the board at that time. Once again, Susan, I want to state to you that I have never, neither my family nor friends, have I had benefit. I think it's easier, perhaps easier for people who can write a $50,000 check to fund their own campaign to talk about those sorts of disclosures. But I had less than $3,000 in my campaign. I don't have annual fundraisers because I don't want to ask people for money. I only have fundraisers when I need to. All of that is disclosed. I'm happy to show it to anybody. We actually have a lot on our transparency website, but I think that it could be made more accessible to people, and I would support having additional information there. We do, by state law, have to reveal conflicts of interest. I have no conflicts of interest. I've never gotten a friend or a family member a job or those sorts of things. So I think if we've had some good improvements, and again, elected officials have nothing to do. We do not pick who gets a contract.
Thank you. Mr. Frank.
Thank you. What Ann says is true, that elected board members don't choose the contracts, but it's also true that we were not aware of the relationships that existed. And as much as the acting chair shouted at members who asked these questions and said they were going to protect staff and didn't say they were going to protect taxpayers, as much as that happened, I never had a single board member come to me and said, hey, we shouldn't know this exists. Because we should have known. It should be disclosed if a relationship exists. So that's step one, and we haven't made that change yet, but we're talking about it. But truthfully, I do think that it's really appropriate that these questions have come to light. The majority party that has controlled Lake County government for probably a century or more appears to be a little bit asleep at the switch, because we haven't had these disclosures. We would have only known about the chairman's abuse of his P card only because there was a Freedom of Information Act request for his spending. That wasn't disclosed to the board members by staff proactively. Apparently, there was an issue going on for a long time. It wasn't brought to our attention. It was only brought out because there was a Freedom of Information Act request. So in terms of transparency initiatives, I would support video streaming for all committee meetings where major work happens.
I'm sorry,
You can call
Mr. Frank.
your children across the country, but you can't watch your county board meetings.
Thank you. Ms. Zeidman.
Yeah, I strongly believe in transparency. I think that the county board and the Forest Reserve meetings should be televised. I don't think anything should be hidden from community members.
Thank you. Ms. Main, you'll have the next question first. And this is on consolidation. How aggressive should the county board be in pursuing consolidation of governmental bodies under its authority?
Thank you. Well, the caveat there is governmental entities under its authority. And the reality is, Susan doesn't seem to understand that there's a lot of areas that we don't have authority over. We can't tell Vernon Hills to not develop. We can't tell Vernon Hills or Highland Park or a school district what to do. So we have taken steps to have consolidation of those units under our control. That being said, to quote Holly Kim, that being said, I think that we can bring together leaders. One of the great things about Lake County is that we can bring together leaders and talk about ways in which we can have shared services and which we can ask other people, are you willing to give up power? Are you willing to give up control? Out of our last Leaders Summit, the consolidation of 911 emergency services arose, and we are working on that. It's voluntary, and it looks like we'll be able to save millions of dollars. It's been a long slog getting people to be willing to come in and realize that we can, in this important service, save money and improve response time. So I'm all for consolidation, and I'd be happy to lead a discussion, but we can't force other units of government to do it, but we can invite them to the table.
Thank you. Ms. Malter.
Can you repeat the question?
Yes. How aggressive should the county board be in pursuing consolidation of governmental bodies under its authority?
I think the county board has been slow-walking consolidation and complaining about its lack of power, but doing as little as possible. Before the stepping down of our recent chairman, he complained that only 14 of 27 units of our government are right now eligible to be reduced, and yet the only things that have been consolidated are the CV drainage district, a sanitary district, and a cemetery. There's 102 counties in Illinois, and I know this isn't as much part of the question, but I don't think we even need 102 counties to be doing the same efforts over and over. There's an enormous amount of expense and waste. Even within the Lake County Board, where we also have the same board is the oversees the Lake County Forest Preserve, and yet we have all kinds of duplicated efforts and waste. I think that it's a shame how slow the walking is of the consolidation, and I don't know the reasons for it, but it makes no sense, and I do believe that it can be aggressively pursued. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Zeidman.
Yeah, I think we do need to consolidate to save our tax dollar money. For example, the assessor's office, there's one in each township, and I don't think that we need that many, maybe one or two.
Mr. Frank.
Yeah, so in addition to governmental bodies who are under our direct control, we can be a leader and move in a better direction. So Susan before mentioned the legislation that would have allowed us to elect our county assessor directly by the voters instead of having it being appointed by the county. And one of the things I've heard from conversations I've had with township officials and township assessors is we can talk about getting rid of township assessors and consolidating that after we get the elected assessor. Because right now, if you eliminate township assessors, the assessor is unelected. And so it's a step in the right direction. That's why it was frustrating and disappointing that the county board took the position against directly electing the assessor. I think the voters should be able to have that say. I think being able to elect the county assessor is a big step forward to eliminating township assessors and this dual layer system that we have, which is really inefficient. And most of us who maybe see our tax bill and pay it, or maybe if you haven't had an opportunity to work through the appeals process, it doesn't make sense why there's all these layers. And sometimes when it comes to governance, sometimes the common sense answer is the best one. And so we can lead in some other areas besides what's directly under our control.
Thank you. We're now getting ready for the final question before closing statements. And Ms. Malter, you'll be getting the final question first. This is on ethics. Do you believe in changing the procedure for investigation of ethics violations after an alleged violation has been brought to your attention or the attention of a board member?
Wait, can you read that again?
Do you believe in changing the procedure for investigation of ethics violations after an alleged violation has been brought to the attention of a county board member?
I think we need to change almost everything about our ethics policies. If you were to look up the ethics ordinances, the purchasing ordinance, and just the Lake County Board's ethics ordinance, you'd see that it's only a couple pages long, 12 pages long for the other one, where most places it's at least twice as long, and Cook County is 20 times as long. We don't have basic things in place, and we don't have ethical training in place, and so that there are going to keep being ethical issues. This matter with the P card wouldn't have been a problem if we had ethical oversight in the first place. There were no mechanisms put in and no internal mechanisms. And that's the case for almost everything across the board with Lake County Ethics. There was a meeting last week or the week before, the Finance Committee of the Forest Preserve Board, where Ann expressed confusion about the importance of disclosing relationships with vendors. And the idea that there wouldn't have already been training, it's not Ann's fault herself, although she's been in there for 14 years, she could shown intellectual curiosity, but the leadership of the board, our professional staff, hasn't made ethics be something that they've really explained to our board members. And it makes sense that when you hear them talking about ethics, they seem not to know what they're talking about. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Main.
Yes, thank you. I don't think I want to take an ethics lesson from Cook County, but there's always room for improvement, as I said. I was disappointed. I was shocked about the P cards. I have not used a P card, so those are the procurement cards, and so I was disappointed. I had assumed that an audit would have caught that gap, and so I'm glad that that is being addressed, because that is important. I think what we need at the county is what we have at the Forest Preserve, and that's what I've called for, and that is an outside compliance officer or ethics officer. So that way you, the voters, the residents, can feel that we have somebody who is not beholden to staff or a specific board member. And so that's what I've called for, and I think that that would help give people confidence in their government. I think we do have a lot of guidelines in place, and I think that we can always, as I said, always improve on that. I think what's important is that we have a standard set from the top, and that we believe that we can have people who will act ethically. I also have asked, and I've called, if there has been any illegal activity. I encourage anyone who knows about that to immediately go to the state's attorney. You can go to and report it so that this can be taken care of and dealt with properly. Thank you.
Mr. Frank.
Thank you for the question. Following the disclosure of the chairman's inappropriate use of a county credit card, I put some thoughts on paper and shared them with the entire board. I requested several things that I thought could help us move forward in a better way. I'm happy to say that the board has agreed with some of my suggestions. And the first one was bringing in an outside entity to conduct an analysis of our policies regarding the credit cards. And that report was brought to us last week. That is also linked on my website. If you want to see it, it's also available on the county website. And that report found that we had weak controls governing board members' use of the credit cards. There's been a lot of discussion about staff. That really wasn't the issue here. The issue was the board members, and I'll just briefly explain why. Because as a board member, I don't have a P card, I don't use one, but if I did, I would be submitting my receipts for approval to the board chairman. So he has political power over me approving my receipts. And that's a fundamental weakness in the process that existed. The only person overseeing the board chairman's receipts was the county administrator, who again works for the board. So there's an inherent conflict there. That policy needs to be cleaned up. I would support eliminating the P cards completely. I think we've seen that they are ripe for abuse. Secondly, regarding...
Thank you.
Okay.
Ms. Zeidman.
Yeah, I think when there's an ethics violation, it needs to be handled by somebody independent of the board. Regarding the P cards, I also think that needs to be monitored by somebody independent of the board, someone who's not affiliated with the board.
Thank you. Well, keep that microphone. For our closing statements, we're going to start with Ms. Zeidman. Okay, have 90 seconds. Thank you.
Well, in closing, I just want to say that I'm running because I want to give back to my community. I love it here, and I want to make it a great place. I'm in the human services field, so I feel I'd be an asset to the county board and also to the Health and Community Services Committee. I want to ensure that people can access the resources that they need, and I hope I can count on your support.
Thank you. Mr. Frank.
Thank you. Thanks again to the League of Women Voters for having us here today. I'm seeking re-election to the county board because I'm standing up for the values of our community. You've heard me make some partisan comments, and I've talked about the Republican Party leadership a little bit here today. And the reason that touches a nerve with me fundamentally is because our community is not a partisan community. I know a lot of folks who vote for candidates of both parties, and a lot of people around in our community used to like voting for John Porter and Mark Kirk and Bob Dole, and that sort of independence is vanishing from the Republican Party. And so I'm standing up for our community's values. I mentioned the UN report on climate change. The status quo is taking us down a dangerous path, both with climate change and with our governmental ethics. Our challenges are real and severe. We should not be comfortable with what's happening. The county desperately needs new leadership who will take bold action and move us in a better direction. It's time for a change in leadership in Lake County because one party has controlled this government for more than a century. It is time for a change. If I'm lucky enough to be reelected on November, I will continue to push for that change. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Frank. Ms. Main.
Thank you. It's really been my honor to serve my community, and I am committed to Lake County and its government and its people. And as I said, I've had accomplishments in a number of different areas. And anyone who knows me knows that I don't look at party lines when I talk about people. I've specifically avoided doing that in this conversation and in other conversations because I know that I have friends in a wide spectrum, and they respect that about me. I served as a village trustee for 5 years, and I understood then that the issues that engaged me, especially our environment, required a broader venue in which to implement positive change, economic development, restoration of the environment. So I've stayed at the county, and I ran for the county board. I've been asked to run for state legislature. I've been asked to run for Congress. And I've turned those down because I want to use my skills as an educator and as a scientist and as someone who embraces people and is willing to say, when whoever you are, you have a good idea. My opponent, however, was running for state rep a few months ago and has now found an interest in county government. And I can see from her answers that she hasn't delved into this and feels that the county can tell other units of government what can do. We can't do that, but we can be leaders and we can engage people and have a fruitful conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Malter.
In the conversation about ethics, Anne repeated first concerned about accusations and then repeated that she hasn't done anything that's not right or she hasn't used a P card. And no one's making an accusation, or I'm not making an accusation about that. I'm making an accusation about the lack of concern about ethics and having things in place so that we have properly trained people. No one who serves is supposed to be on forever. We're not talking about term limits, but Anne isn't going to serve forever, and whether or not she's done something wrong or not, she should be just as concerned about making sure we have ethical standards for everyone to follow. I thank the League of Women Voters for this hosting this event. I appreciate this opportunity for us all to reflect on what we want from our government. Talking to voters this year, I found that people are very concerned about taxes going up and about the lack of information about how contracts are given. I'd very much like to serve. I'm very concerned about the ethics. I'm surprised to hear, well, not so surprised, but Lake County government, it turns out, is not such a tight ship. And it turns out that Cook County, amazingly enough, has a better ethical system set up, and we could take a look at those. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Malter. And this concludes our forum, and please, audience, give these candidates your applause. Okay. Just a couple quick things. I know I don't have to preach to the choir that everybody here is going to be voting, but if you know someone that still needs to register to vote, you can check the Lake County Clerk's website for multiple opportunities. Online registration is still available through October 21st to anyone with a valid state ID or driver's license, and early voting opens October 22nd. So thank you. One last thing, I told a reminder that the audience, the candidates have agreed not to use video excerpts in their campaigns. Thank you.